welcome to Center for Architecture and Metropolitan Planning, welcome to camp, and welcome to another edition of Urban Talks. This series is focused on abroad architects, studios, and their work. And we today have a chance to also start the timber construction show, which will be held in Holešovická tržnice for next 2 days in the hall number 13. And if you want to buy a ticket, you can do it via goout.cz, same as you did for this event. Today you will listen to a lecture of Carl Bäckstranda, Deputy CEO and architect in Swedish studio White Arkitekter. That is based in Stockholm, and you will have a chance to ask. You will have a chance to ask him questions. If you will do it via Slido.com, that is platform which you can use on your browser, and you will be able to ask us a question. I will see them in my tablet. Do it via hashtag #CampuiOnline. You will find it in comments under the video that you are watching right now. That's for our audience on Facebook and our website. And now let me start this event, start the festival with introductory word of Pavel Horák, director of the festival. Welcome to camp.
Thank you very much for your introduction, and thank you very much, Camp, for hosting us today. It's always a pleasure to be here. Last time, 2 years ago, actually, I was sitting in the corner with the empty hall, what was really sad. So it was only online. So I'm really happy that today we have full house and we can meet in person. How it was already said, this evening is part of the Salon dřevostavby, what's kind of festival of wooden architecture, and we continue with the program tomorrow. But today will be this lecture, and Salon is actually an event to promote wooden architecture to most of the people, let's say, to general public and so on. So we are happy that we can cooperate with Camp or Galerie Radoslava Fragnera, with whom we did some events before and so on. I would like to thank to our partners who supported us, who are named here, that I don't forget anything, to our also to our media partners and other supporters. I would like to thank to Sweden Embassy, who supported us for this evening, and I would like to invite you to Holešovická tržnice, what will be tomorrow, a day after. I hope that I said everything important. My colleague nodded on me that everything is fine, so I won't make it longer, and I will give space to other, maybe better speakers. Thank you very much for coming to that and interesting in wooden architecture.
Thank you very much for your words, and now please I will ask to come here Robin Ersson, second Secretary of Embassy of Sweden in Prague. Welcome to camp.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, and dear guests, it is my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Embassy of Sweden in Prague at this opening evening on the Timber Construction Show 2022. The ambassador, Mr. Fredrik Jörgensen, is currently in Sweden attending other duties and probably watching the FIFA World Cup qualification match between Sweden and the Czech Republic today. But I'm assure you, he sends his warmest regards. The Swedish Embassy are honored that we could give our patronage to this year's show, not only because the presence of the architect, Mr. Carl Bäckstranda, manager of the internationally acclaimed Swedish studio White Arkitekter, but also because Sweden has been traditionally working with wood as the main construction material. You may all know these iconic pictures of the Swedish red summer houses with the white knots in the Swedish countryside. And many acclaimed architects rediscover now the qualities of this more sustainable material. Lots of amazing examples of the use of wood for more sustainable living can be found in Sweden. And you will see several examples during this inspirational show. But Sweden is not only working with Sweden is working with this fantastic material, but not only in the field of architecture. An important part of Sweden's economic transition strategy, apart from reducing emission, is about actively trying to use natural process to produce energy, industrial products, and much else. This so-called bioeconomy involves much more than making things more environmentally friendly. Sweden is pioneering ways to use natural materials that are 100% recyclable and can be a part of the cradle-to-grave process. And Sweden has a wealth of sustainable natural resources to work with. Already, most of our energy consumed comes from renewables, and its managed forests already provide the main supply of wood products to the EU. Thank you. Sustainable textile fibers are also no longer a distant dream. Research projects are turning trees into textile and old textiles into paper. Tree to Textile, owned by the H&M Group, Inter-IKEA Group, Stora Enso, and LSCS Invest, aims to commercialize a new sustainable textile fiber, making it more widely available. Using a new technology, Tree to Textile produce bio-based textile fibers with a very low environmental footprint. In other words, the Swedish forest provides with the raw material, and the rest is very clever technology. But back to the housing issues. By 2050, 2/3 of the world's population will live in cities according to the UN. And Sweden has one of the fastest rates of urbanization in Europe. The capital of Sweden, Stockholm, is growing so quickly that all kinds of challenges need to be met. Millions of people need to be supplied with clean water, clean heat, and clean energy. And traditionally, a solution has often been to build more homes on forest and farmlands. But in 1995, the city of Stockholm decided instead to find the world's first urban national park and protect its green spaces. So instead, several old industrial areas have been and are being redeveloped as efficient, low-energy housing areas while the city extends its tram routes. On the edge of Stockholm's urban park, the new eco-quarter of Norra Djurgårdsstaden, Stockholm Royal Seaport, is using an old gaswork to build thousands of eco-friendly homes with charging station for electric cars, planning a new tram line, but the real innovation is behind the walls and under the ground. Sweden uses 3 times as much energy as the global average just to combat the cold climate and power the high-tech society. But living in cities could be potentially more energy efficient too. So, Stockholm Royal Seaport is a test bed for a globally innovative smart energy grid in partnership with energy companies, universities, and home builders. But can wood be one of the solutions to those big challenges? Several amazing architectural projects prove it is possible. You can see, for example, the exhibition in Jaroslav Wagner's gallery in Prague, about 20-story tall, Sara Culture Center in Skellefteå from White Arkitekter studio, completely made of wood. And featuring actually a tree trunks and a forest-like atmosphere, the Swedish pavilion at the World Expo in Dubai aims to recreate the feeling of a Swedish forest. And the forest is an 18-meter tall building entirely made of wood from the Swedish province of Dalarna. It was designed by 3 teams from 3 different countries. Alessandro Rippellino, architect in Sweden, Studio Adrien Gardier in France, and Luigi Pardo, Arkitekter in Italy. So I believe that creative ideas are needed to build a sustainable future, and I'm looking forward to seeing many inspirational and innovative solutions during this fantastic show. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now I will ask you for a warm welcome for Carl Bäckstranda. Welcome to Center for Architecture and Metropolitan Planning.
Thank you. So, thank you so much for inviting me to Prague and Czechia. And I called this lecture "Let Nature Lead," and I mean it's. I will come back to this, but it's also a lot about walk the talk, because I think there's a lot of talk around both sustainability and, of course, wood and all about this. But how do we really make a change? So, we know this planet, and what I read, and I think it comes from the Swedish researcher Johan Rockström. He said that if the whole world would live as we do in Sweden today, they would need 4 planets to manage this, and we know there is just one. So there is absolutely a need for a transition. And cities, we know, and Robin already mentioned the city's enormous importance in this, and I would say they are both a threat and an enabler to make a more sustainable future. And of course, today, when I was sitting on the train from Stuttgart to Prague, I had the opportunity to listen to this impressive President Zelensky when he was speaking to the Swedish Parliament. We have listened to him speaking to many parliamentarians the last weeks now, but today he was speaking live on a link to the Swedish Parliament. And what was maybe new in his speak here was that he also started to talk about what will happen when the war has come to an end. And what he said to the Swedish parliamentarians was that then there will be a huge need of rebuilding the nation of Ukraine, of course, but the cities themselves. I mean, we know how they are now being destroyed, the infrastructure, and he said I can't quote him, but he said, we will need support from architects all over Europe in order to support in this rebuilding of Ukraine. So you could say that today the world is burning in many ways, not to forget then what we just said in Ukraine, but of course it's been burning for a long time due to the climate. And this urgent action, urgency now to take action, in fact you could say it started many decades ago. In fact, in 1972 it was the first environmental UN conference in Stockholm, 1972. And at that time, the climate issue was already raised. And still we are talking, but we are starting to take action on this. And the sector I belong to, and I guess many of you belongs to, are responsible, or we can influence a lot of this, the needed change, because the building sector represents 36%, in Europe, it represents 36% of the carbon emissions overall. So we can make a change. And we must not, as I've said now a few times, we can't just look and talk, we need to take action. And therefore, I personally was very, a little bit surprised, I must say, but also happy when I, 1 year or 1.5 years ago, listened to Ursula von der Leyen when she had her State of the Union speak in the European Parliament, where she also took the opportunity to say that to make this transition happen, and in the EU, you know, we are talking about to implement the Green Deal. But what Ursula von der Leyen said as the Commission, the chair of the EU Commission, she said that in order to make this happen, we need to do it with the help of architecture. And doing it with architecture, it means also to bring together sustainability with the style, a new aesthetic, but also do it together and make it interdisciplinary. It's not a thing just for architects. Architects play a big role in it, but we need to do it together with engineers, with artists, with other disciplines in order to make this happen. And I'm then representing this company called White. The name comes from our founder, Sidney White, who was of British origin, but he grew up in Gothenburg in Sweden in the 30s, 40s, and in 51 he established the company after a competition win. And today we are more than 800 of us in the company, and it's employee-owned, so everyone working in White can buy shares, and we are doing it as a collective and taking it further. And what also make it connecting to what I just described from the new European Bauhaus of Ursula von der Leyen is that we are interdisciplinary in the sense that most of us are architects, but there are also biologists, anthropologists, engineers, and other disciplines, because we do believe that we need to work together in order to make good architecture. And please listen to a few of the voices at White.
We all need places to live and grow. Places where we can learn, play, heal, and work. Where we love, feel, laugh. Architecture shapes spaces where human life happens.
We consume more than our planet can provide at the expense of future generations. The construction industry accounts for 36% of the CO2 emissions in Europe. Less than 1% of ongoing projects are carbon neutral. We are at a tipping point. We can and we will do better.
Each one of us has the power to make a difference. By working together through partnerships and collaborations, we can achieve change. Our mission is to enable sustainable life through the art of architecture, to create spaces where everyone can thrive. Architecture and design are our tools in the search for innovation and new ways to live.
We will push boundaries. Through design excellence, all our architecture will be carbon neutral before the end of this decade. Are you up for it?
So, yes, I hope some of us are up for it. So this was a few voices from back in Stockholm and in London and other places. Doing it together, very important as a collective, and also see the potential with architecture to make good places that also make us feel good. And I think the health aspect of architecture must not be forgotten, and we will come back to that when it comes to wooden architecture, because there it's even proved in research that living in an environment or in buildings where wood are exposed, you do feel better. And it's not a coincidence that in many new healthcare projects you bring more wood into the spaces, because you do heal better. And this is proved in research. And then just to say again how we need to work on this climate neutrality. And it's about balancing. We do know that we do have emissions. We can't get rid of them all. We can reduce them, but the ones that we still have, we have to compensate in different ways. And do we manage all those things, doing things together, making it beautiful and healing, and then also carbon neutral, then it's a win-win. So, coming from the north, a country of a lot of forests. I know you have some forests also here, but this is from the north of, at least I passed a few on my train ride today. No pictures of them there. However, of course, in our country of Sweden, the tradition, as also has already been mentioned, is very long building in wood. And I mean, it's obvious, when you have the material nearby, it's very easy to use. But it's also how you use the material. And already in the old times, it was done in a way so it could be reused. You could bring down your building and rebuild it somewhere else. I mean, thinking circular. People thought like this a long time ago. And even whole cities were more or less far back built in wood. So it's a long tradition. And our royal castle in Stockholm, it looks like a stone building, but in fact, behind those stone walls, it's a timber structure. And I can't verify it, but I've heard that it's the biggest timber structure in the northern of Europe, at least. So there is a history, but moving into today's more contemporary architecture, we are, as I said, then learning again, relearning how to use wood for those reasons I've said, and coming more into the materiality, the softness, the feeling of the material really makes it very, very interesting to work with today. And this is from a sea bath in the southern part of Sweden. And you know, it's not only a sea bath in Sweden as in part of Central Europe, also taking a sauna is very popular. And another, going to a neighboring country in Denmark, we have also done a number of those projects where, and of course it's a very natural thing when you are close to the water working with wood structures, but it really gives a feeling of where you want to walk on your bare feet and sit on a sunny day and jump into the cold water of the Baltics. But not only those small projects, growing a little bit bigger, coming further south in the central of Germany, in Frankfurt, we are right now developing this project that happens to be homes for elderly. So you also here bring in a lot of the health aspect into this. Sorry, now I went on the wrong, going in this direction. And moving further west to the island of Greenland, where we are right now finishing the design of this psychiatric clinic, where it's a timber structure that brings this construction that will form the base of this construction, but also then, as I said before, bringing the wood panels and wood material into the actual rooms for the patients living in this healthcare facility, in order to make them feel better and hopefully a faster healing. And then I will come back to this, it's already been mentioned, the Sara Cultural Center, where we are talking in a completely different scale of a project. But coming back to this critical, urgent issue we all have, I would say, in many of the cities in Europe, but globally, of course. But as I think both goes for Sweden and Czech Republic, I mean, the urbanization and the need for affordable housing. And in that respect, wood can also play an important role, we have learned in many of our projects. And I will talk through three, how would I call it, methodologies or construction methodologies that we are right now working with when it comes to this, to supply on or to work on specifically on the housing sector. And the three ones, I'm sure you are well aware of them, but it's about the modularity, it's the glue laminated technology, and then the most recent one, the cross-laminated timber. And those can be, of course, also made in a mix, but I will start talking on them one by one. And the modularity is, I would say, the one that we have worked for a long time with in Sweden, and as been mentioned, it's quite a big, many companies that has for decades been working on this in part of those areas in Sweden where you do have a lot of forests, and you can then build those modules in indoors, making it very, how do you say, with a high precision and good standard out of that, and then transport it easily to the building sites where it's put together and having a quite fast building process. And we know the speed in the building process is what really make a difference when it comes to affordability, because if you can have a fast production, then you can make it more affordable in it's less cost intensive, and then in the next step, hopefully, then it also becomes affordable. So this is, but of course, we don't want to compromise on quality into this, but it's a way to keep quality and still have a speed in construction. And this is a student housing in Gothenburg. And of course, there are limitations when you talk about modularity, where it will be a lot of repetition and things like that, but that is something that then can, in some projects, as in student housing and others, I mean, it makes sense to have a repetition in that, and then you have to work on the facade and other things to make another outcome of the repetition. The next methodology then is the glue laminated timber constructions, and this I'm sure you also are well aware of, but then it's of course giving a completely different way of making it more flexible when it comes to organizing the plans and how you can develop and mix different sizes, etc., when it comes to the housing projects. But it's getting more and more also price worth working with those processes, and there are quite a few now industries that are dealing with this, and with many industries it also becomes more of a competition and better quality into it. So it's yeah, we see more and more of this happening. And then coming to the cross-laminated constructions, where we are then talking about wider or wall elements, we could say, that are then prefabricated, and those can vary in sizes, of course, but you can see here how they put together, and in the end, it's really, I mean, something that you are not aware of what's behind those facades in that sense. And here I would say you get a good mix of, I mean, not as flexible always as the glue laminated projects, but still a lot more flexible than the modular projects. Moving on. Yeah, and then what's probably will be the most common might be the hybrid structures, where we will have a mix of the different methodologies and still having wood as the what you say, the represent the vast majority of the structures. But even in a project like this that you will see more of now, I mean, there are some parts that might not be wooden still, but I think we can drive the wooden agenda very, very far. So the combination of different methodologies, glue lam, CLT, and modular might be the future. And this is images from the construction of this Sara Kulturhus, the project far up in the north of Sweden, in Skellefteå. And you can see how there is also those modules that are put in place, and those are, in this case, representing everyone representing one hotel rooms, because it's a mix of a cultural center and an hotel. And then I also want to say that, of course, it's, I mean, talking about wood, it's not always sustainable. I mean, we have to make sure that the wood is coming from good sources. There are parts where one definitely, there are forests that must not be cut down. We all know about that. And when we are having forests, it's about how we grow the trees, and how we make sure that there is replanting, and that it's also, and this is, I think, the most challenging thing, that how do we manage to keep the biodiversity? Because sometimes we now notice that there are a conflict between different environmental aspects, and we know that for the climate, wood definitely is a good thing, but we must secure that we also support a future biodiversity, because without the biodiversity on the planet, we will simply not survive. We need those species in the forests and other places in order to make life, make it a good habitat, the planet. So, finally, running up more a little bit, images here from Skellefteå inside the hotel room, and also here you can see in one of the big spaces how we do also use some steel. You could say we are cheating a little bit, but I think it's to make sure that you do use the best materials in the best places. So in those big trusses here, I mean, yes, wood is good in managing the pressure, but then there is also some, what's the word for it when, sorry? Yeah, tension, where we do believe that steel is a better material. So one must not, according to me, be fanatic in something, you need sometimes to compromise a little bit. And here you can see one of the lead architects of the project, Robert. He was here talking a few weeks ago together with his colleague Oscar. So they send their greetings here. Now it's me instead. And in the stair here, and you can see a night image. But then coming to this, I mean, as I said in the beginning here, we do need also to make sure that it does the projects that they really do deliver on this climate issue. And right now in Europe, we are struggling with also the definition of what is a climate neutral building. And this comes from a Norwegian, from Norway, where they have set this definition where they are starting on the zero emission building, ZEB, on operational to the far left, and then it's operational and material, OM, and then it's construction, operational and material, construction, operation, material, and what you call it, it's in the, oh, I lost it now, but the complete is demolition also anyway. So then you are taking it the full. We at White, we usually try to work on the ZEBCOM in the middle. It's maybe a little bit Swedish, not on one side. We stay in the middle. And here you can see more in detail what's included then when it comes to those calculations for the different parts of the, E was end of life. There we have it. End of life, it's called. So you can see here in the COM, you do work a lot on the early stages there, and then in construction phase, and then partly on during usage of the building, the operation energy for sure. But you skip the end of life. We leave that, but it's still a good start, I would say, to try making this verified. And this is just an example then how you do make a calculation out of this. And then very important here, as you can see then, the carbon sequester, I can't even pronounce it, sequestration. Anyway, it has to do with what is then part of the wood structure that has already captured a lot of CO2, and that can then be recalculated in this calculation. And then this is also more and more coming. I would say it's more in Central Europe than in Sweden, the solar panels that can make a difference on the positive side, and other, what you call it, energy that is renewable, that on site, of course. So we must not forget the sequester biogenic carbon. That is part of the solution for the why we should work with more wood. And finally, I would like to give the words to the next generation.
We can still fix this. You can still fix this. To survive, we need to stop burning fossil fuels. But this alone will not be enough. Lots of solutions are talked about. But what about the solution that is right in front of us? I'll let my friend George explain.
There is a magic machine that sucks carbon out of the air, costs very little, and builds itself. It's called a tree. A tree is an example of a natural climate solution. Mangroves, peat bogs, jungles, marshes, seabeds, kelp forests, swamps, coral reefs, they take carbon out of the air and lock it away. Nature is a tool we can use. to repair our broken climate. These natural climate solutions could make a
Thank you very much for your lecture. You can take your microphone and take a seat. Now it's time for questions, if you have some, please. And I also ask Mr. Horák to take a seat there next to Mr. Bäckstranda. If you have a question, you can ask us. There will be time for it. If you want to ask a question via Slido, you can use that platform, and via hashtag Campuj Online, you will get into our chat room and you will be able to ask a question. So once again, thank you for your lecture. And there is first question. So if there's my colleague with microphone, welcome to camp and welcome to discussion.
Thank you for a very great lecture. I really enjoyed it. I have a question. You talked a lot about the biodiversity and about the biodiversity of the forest. In my research, I actually also focused on which which species of the wood to harvest, which is the natural species, and how to support the biodiversity, like not to support monocultures in the forestry and so on. Do you support also, like do you collaborate with wood industry on supporting the biodiversity of the forest and so on?
Yeah, as I said, I think it's very important to make sure we know from where the wood is coming. And in this example of Sara Cultural Center, we even had control in the sense that the timber was, the forest that delivered the timber was in a very close range of the building site, and the factories that took care of the raw material and made those glue lamps and other products, they were also nearby. We are not always that fortunate that we can work so close and of that, and then we have to rely on certifications saying from where the wood are coming, and rely on those institutions that do certify the wood there. But I think we has an obligation as architects to make sure that we are not being part of exploiting those areas of forests that must not be demolished or cut down or something for those very important reasons as biodiversity means.
My question was more towards whether you also pay attention which species of the trees you use to support mixed forests in comparison to monocultures of the forests and so on, because like for instance spruce wood has been grown here in Czechoslovakia in communism. Spruce wood was massively produced, and all the mixed forests were replaced with spruce monoculture because it's the species that grow fastest. It's the lowest quality wood, but the fastest growing, and we had ecological catastrophes thanks to this.
I'm not into all the details there in this country then, but I know that we do have a very also intense discussion in Sweden on this topic, and I would say that it's right now, a discussion how to make sure that the forest does not end up in, as you say, monocultures, and that's for making good forestry, and in the long run also how do you say, you can, with the diversity of different trees, for instance, that the forests become a lot more resilient towards things like storms and other weather phenomenons that can, and fires and things like that. So I know that the forest industry, and this is not really my topic now, maybe some are more into it, but I mean, the forest industry, they are also looking into how to make it more resilient, because of course, I mean, they are not interested either in forests that just fell down when there is a storm coming or something. But I think we need to discuss more about this, and maybe it in the future, partly it already is, I think, part of this how you certify forests. I mean, it's not only the tree itself, it's also how it will be replanted that need to be addressed.
Thank you.
Yeah, please.
I would like to maybe add some, I have two remarks. One is that actually also during Salon we support this, I call it vertical, what's actually connecting, or vertical, what connects forest to the final product or architects or final users. Even tomorrow we have first opening lecture about forests actually. So we see this topic, it's really important because we are feeling that in Czech Republic these people are not speaking with each other. And I think when we start to speak each other, we can really prepare forests for next generation. So it's a really good point. And the other one came to my mind, like because you were speaking about Sarah and about this small circle from where the wood is coming. We actually had a chance to did one project in Australia. And our Australian colleagues from Sydney calculated that even if we brought there, what I wasn't a fan of, we brought their CLT structure, it was much more or much less CO2 producing than to make it in Australia from concrete or bricks. So imagine what such a tool we have in our hands. So really, like even if you do such a thing that you are transporting overseas CLT structure, you are still better in all these things like CO2 and so on. So we have to change something. And you said it in the beginning that we, I think most of us are professionals or connected to architecture and building business. We have to do something because it's not possible to live like this anymore.
We see buildings made of timber more often in architecture competition, etc., etc. More often than it was in the past. What is the most important change in the business in few last years? Why is that so progressive? What was the biggest change in the business that made it possible?
Yeah, as I said, I mean, often it is economic drivers when it comes to this. When I mean, what really make things happen, and I would say that what has also driven more lately now is also when it comes to sometimes to densify, but still keep existing structures, because when we're talking sustainability, we know that the most sustainable thing often is to keep what we have, not to demolish and build new. And then if we want to add something to an existing structure, that might be a concrete structure or something, then wood is a very good thing to put on top of that, because it's also light and it can therefore and also bring another character to the environment. So I would say that it's a very good complementary material when we now are focusing a lot on circularity and keeping existing structures. That at least one impression I've had, and this is probably not more than 2-3 years back. But even before that, I would say it had a lot to do with what I mentioned there, the speed in constructing, using this modularity and things like that, that really has pushed the wood agenda, both in Scandinavia and partly in the UK, where I've been involved. But maybe you can add.
Yeah, I agree, and I would add that Actually, it's the biggest problem what we struggle with is actually mindset of the people, and I think this is really rapidly changing. That I think also now, if you are like buying something or building something so expensive like building is actually, and it's getting more and more expensive, then you want to do something really good and good for you and good for the environment. So you have no problem to invest maybe 5 to 10% more and to have a wooden structure. And this is really important because if society changes that this mindset, then we can do everything because we have technologies, we have producers, we have engineers, we have everything here. It's not that we can solve fire protection and everything at the moment, so it's no problem. It's just the mindset of the people that they still see sometimes wooden structures as some cottages or massive structures in Canada landscape or whatever.
Well, there is another question: how to support wooden architecture? Is it okay to announce an architecture competition that say, okay, this building has to be made of wood? Does it happening right now?
I am not fan of regulations, actually. If
maybe it's a motivation. Maybe it's not
even if it would be really attractive for me to make such a regulation, or like to say, okay, we have to make 50% of public buildings in wood. I think it's much more sustainable, let's say, if it comes from down. You know, sometimes you have to make regulations for a short time to show some direction. But I think that it's happening that more and more architects use wood also or timber in competitions. I think this is organically done, and this is, I think, the best.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, regulations or not. I think maybe the regulation should not be that it needs to be wood, but it might be. I think we need to have tough regulation on what the climate footprint should be of buildings, and then we can come to different solutions into that. And then I'm sure that wood will qualify quite a lot in many cases there. But I've also been. I mean, in Berlin, I know, for instance, they have been setting some rules for public buildings where they really want to promote the wood. So they sometimes, I think, for the school projects, they say they must be in wood. And yeah, I can't really say if it's good or bad, but I think one should address this climate issue very tough.
There's another question that asks, what's the biggest challenge or what's the crucial aspect of carbon neutral building? So imagine that we have an architecture competition and it says it has to be carbon neutral. So what is the biggest challenge? It's timber construction, green energy, or water circulation?
Oh. I would say still don't forget the other stuff like light and ergonomy and other things, because sometimes I have feeling that you have to do passive house or you have to achieve some level of energy and you forgot that people have to live in the building. So sorry, this was my immediate reaction on this. I don't know, like I really don't know how to answer this.
The question again, please.
What is the biggest challenge or crucial aspect of carbon neutral building? So if it's one of these, green energy, water circulation, or timber construction, if we are talking about public building, maybe a kindergarten or school in the city center, what is the biggest challenge?
It's hard to say. I'm coming back to, I think the biggest challenge is that we must not come in conflict with other environmental goals when we do the climate neutral buildings. That is the biggest challenge, really. Not sure if it's a good answer, but that's what we are struggling with, and we have touched a few of them already here in the discussion.
So next question, please.
Are there any questions in the audience? Yes, please. I will ask my colleague. Thank you. Welcome to discussion. Welcome to camp.
Hello. Hello. Yeah. I only have a question. I seen in your presentation you mentioned that you want to be by 2030 carbon neutral. So what is it that you are now not doing for not being carbon neutral, and what are the next steps to reach that? Because it's in 8 years. So how what are the steps to reach the carbon neutral? I don't know, are you still designing in other materials, or I don't know?
Yeah, we did put up a roadmap to reach this, and of course it's things are moving quickly, and there are new materials that we maybe are not aware of fully now. But I mean, right now, I mean, we still are dealing a lot with concrete in many of our projects. We are doing a lot of timber projects, but not only timber projects, and we all know that today the concrete is a massive carbon emissioner, there are a lot of carbon emissions from concrete. So that is the challenge today, that we have to change partly the industry, and I think the concrete industry might, or I know that they are also challenging this question, making more climate-friendly concrete. Still, it's a little bit experimental, and it's very expensive, I mean, and so on. But that's what I think, so we will not manage this alone as architects. We need, as I said, also do it together with other parts of the industry. So material is very, very important. And then we must not forget on making energy efficiency, and this is a lot also in the existing building stock, of course. And we are also dealing a lot with the existing building stock, so that's also part of it. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question? Anyone? When you compare the traditional building, I mean traditional construction, concrete, and the timber one, we have seen that there's a lot of prefabrication, etc., etc. When you compare it in terms of noise, the management, I mean vehicles on the construction side and emissions on the side, what the comparison looks like? Is it better for people who lives next to the site to seeing that there is a wooden construction built? Is it less noisy with lower emissions?
I mean, I have no proof now for what I'm saying. It's more from what I've experienced myself. But yes, definitely, as I said, often those prefabricated building, or when you have the modularity and things like that, the construction site is a construction site a lot shorter time, and then of course it's less of a fuss for the neighbors, you could say, in that sense. But when it comes to noise and things like that, it's hard to say really. But probably it's as it's for a shorter time, I would say it make a difference.
I would say definitely it's better, even if I have also, I have no proof for that, but just imagine that you are living next to some construction where they are, or building site when they are building from concrete for a longer time, or they are assembling a wooden structure what smells good. It's less traffic and so on. So I think it's generally also nice to visit building sites from wood. So I think generally it's also for the time of building better, definitely.
Sometimes they will have to close the roads because those modules are so big when they are coming there. So that might interfere. But I agree with you. It's a lot easier than a normal construction site.
Another question? I have another one that is close to this. What about the foundation? Because in Prague you have to have a foundation that accommodates a lot of cars. Unfortunately, foundations are always made of concrete. Is that right? In case of these buildings, is it standard?
No, I mean, yes, not always, but in most cases, I mean, where I'm involved, we are dealing with concrete in the basements and things like that. But I did hear now when I was in Stuttgart the other night, and I was discussing with some engineers and architects there in a project where they are really now testing to making also a basement in wood. But I mean, they are pushing the limits, and we know that's how we need to try things. But I'm not part of that project. Maybe you have another example.
Yeah, I'm also quite conventional in this, and I agree that wood has its space or place in a structure somewhere, and somewhere you should use another materials or technologies. It's the same like that. I don't know. We can have wooden windows in a wooden structure, or aluminium windows on wooden structure, and other combinations. And wood is good for many purposes. There are many technologies how you can also do foundations for from wood. Like I think Venice is completely founded or on oak, I think, and so on. So we have many examples, but you have to know and be careful. I think that combination is really cool, and actually also in the upper part of the building, like you use the combination of concrete and wood, and this is normally technologically and also aesthetically sometimes really nice.
And if I ask, what is the next big thing in timber architecture? The next big thing in timber architecture. What you are waiting for?
I start. Okay, like in I think that it's like two stories in Czech Republic and in the world. Like in the world, I see this competition to build as high as possible. So we are not part of it yet. I think that maybe we won't, because in Czech Republic we are not building so high buildings. But in Czech Republic, I think that we need to build several bigger projects, multi-story, what will have good quality, would have good feedback, and people will be happy about it. And this is the base what we need now, because there are not so many yet. And in the world, I think I would maybe stop to build so high and maybe focus a little bit more on quantity, even if there are maybe thousands of wooden projects around the world.
Thank you.
I agree that, I mean, it should not be a race to the top in this. I mean, that's not the answer for the housing crisis, for sure. But I think, as you said, we need also to change the attitude sometimes to this. And there, I believe it's a lot about proving that new timber constructions are as sustainable and long time living as the old ones, because there is nothing like an old tree hut or something. I mean, they have been there for centuries, as we can see. And I think that is something that we really have to prove in our new constructions, that they do last for long. And so that is the big thing.
I would maybe add two more things. That I would like to see more wooden buildings in urban context. So I'm happy that we can present actually wooden architecture in Center for Architecture and Urban Planning. The second one is that I would wish that public investor uses more timber, and how you shown it in the project of the hospital, and that we see all these therapeutical and other psychological positive values of or qualities of timber. So this two more maybe. It's too much maybe for one wooden architecture.
Yeah, I agree. Please, your question.
Because you mentioned existing building stocks. In our work, we do a lot of research of extending existing building stocks with wooden structures. And we actually struggle with, at least in our location, maybe Scandinavia is better, but we struggle with finding enough case studies with wooden expansions of existing building stocks. If you can talk, how is it in Scandinavia? Because we are active in Germany. How is it in Scandinavia? And what are the problems with what you know from practice? Because we are researchers. What are the problems in practice with expanding existing building stocks with wooden architecture?
I think we can give you quite a few good examples of where we add wood structures to existing concrete structures, for instance, in central Stockholm or other big cities in Scandinavia, where it's there to, as you said, in urban areas, really bring wood structures into the existing one. So I'm happy to share it with you after and talk more around that. And I very much support what you also said, that doing more public buildings, as you said, with hospitals and things like that, but also public buildings that really are the ones we use very frequently, show that those are also wood timber constructions. I think this is really something we should aim for.
Is there another question? Yes. Ah, yes, sorry.
Thank you. You asked before, what is the next big thing? My question is, does a timber building always need to look like a timber building? Or is not the next big thing that timber is the normal choice, and we build every that we can build every building with timber, and it doesn't need to be a timber building, because maybe not everybody wants to see the timber or want the timber cladding on the outside. I know Scandinavia does much more with exposed timber.
Yeah. I think we've seen that a lot already, that there is, I've been in projects in Canada, for instance, where we do have the timber structure well hidden behind other materials. That might be one way of doing it. However, I still believe in that this health aspect that has been proven, that showing would really make us feel better. So I think it's partly coming back to this tradition, as you were saying, new ways of looking into it. I mean, it's not a problem to hide a structure, but do we want it? I mean, that's the question.
I would maybe compare it to this discussion, if electric or benzene, you know, like at car or with cars, because there will be always people who would like to expose it, or customers. There will be always people who would like to just use it as a tool and hide it. I think it's both legitimate. Me as an architect, I would always like to show the structure. I like to actually compare the modern wooden structures to old industrial architecture, because there the beauty of the structure is already the basic of the visual effect. So this is how I feel it. But it's absolutely legitimate if you just want to use it as a tool, like from CLT, make walls and then with gyps cover it. It's both okay.
I'm not an architect, I'm an engineer. And I would like to show the structure as well. But we see that quite often that the clients don't really want to do timber, or they don't want to shout out about timber. Especially now the fire discussion. I work in London, and it's a big thing for us. I grew up in a timber country, and I want to show timber, but I think sometimes, are we pushing it too far? Are we pushing it too far with clients? I don't know.
I mean, I've had some discussions saying that when we do our timber projects, timber structure projects now, we are still thinking too much as if it was a concrete structure. So maybe you could say we should twist it even more towards really see the potential in timber and get out of the conventional way of doing a concrete pillar structure.
So how is it actually in London then? It's most of the clients want just hide it, or?
Most architects want to show it. A lot of clients are nervous at the moment because of the fire. And they want to build in timber because they can see with the carbon neutral, the benefits, or what we have, but maybe don't shout about it too much. And a timber cladding, I think especially when we go extremely tall, and sometimes I'm quite critical when I see these new pictures on Twitter with all the exposed timber on the outside on a 40-story timber tower somewhere in a city in North America or in Europe. I'm not sure if that is really feasible at this stage. I'm fully with it. I think we need to think timber from the beginning, and it shouldn't be an afterthought. because on the end we need to build sustainable, and these are 12 by 12 meter grid, sustainable in any material.
Yeah, I want to ask, is it the same when there is a concrete building and the wood is just part of the design? Are they nervous about the design pieces of wood?
I think sometimes they just want to go traditional, and most office buildings, they have brown or grey carpets, brown doors, white ceilings. I don't want to work in there, and you can see, or you have all the blue chip companies, they really push it. But you have a lot of really, really conservative investors. And yeah, I think going back to the discussion, should the government push for a timber policy? I don't think so, but they need to put the barriers out that we can build, that we get treated the same way as steel and concrete. Or we don't need an extra push, we need just the barriers removed.
That's a big topic in Czech Republic at the moment.
do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we even made some studies where we shown that we just want to, be equal, nothing more. And this is enough. Like we need to build, like in Czech Republic, you can build only some 12 meters, let's say without bigger problems. We would like to go maybe to 20, 22. In Australia, it made big change when they changed the building code to 25. And then the market was rapidly growing. So that's the thing what we need in Czech Republic, that we can build these office buildings, 5, 6, 7 floors in timber. So yeah, we don't need skyscrapers. And it's a big topic. Yeah, this is another. It's too much already. It's too many things what we have to change.
Yeah, but the city of Prague, we don't like skyscrapers here. We like our old, low buildings. There's a question, maybe personal question.
Can I just add a point of view from the from the industrial point, like from the industry? We need kind of both. We like to expose the wood, but we don't have enough, let's say, good quality wood to every building to be exposed. So we need as well wood which needs to be, let's say, only constructional wood. So that's just the point from from the industry.
Or we need to accept that the wood isn't always flawless, or because we have people that say we don't want to see any knots, we don't want cracks. Then put plasterboard on it.
There is a question, maybe personal one. Timber construction show is also about sustainable way of living. What does sustainability mean for you in your actual life, in everyday life? What does it mean for you? Be sustainable.
This is a big question. I mean, first of all, I mean, as I'm sure all of you or most of you also think, is, I mean, it's the combination of the social part and the environmental part to make a sustainable life. And the good thing is that, to me at least, they support each other quite often. I mean, just talk about taking the public transportation or bike to work. I happen to live on an island right outside Stockholm, so I bring the bike on the boat sometimes to the office. And I mean, then of course it's a way of both interacting with other people, taking the public transportation, and of course then minimizing the carbon emissions. So I mean, I think it's the way, I mean, to bring those two together and do it in a very daily, ordinary situations. I mean, that's my very personal answer to that. Not so much build relation to the building, but how I live the life.
I think it's actually about decisions. So if you make every day thousands of decisions, and you can, even with small different decision, make some difference. So if I'm buying some clothes, I'm looking from where it comes. If I'm I don't know, building a house, I'm looking for the right material. So I think it's about decisions and choices. And if you take the right ones, then you can make things more sustainable. I think if you put the target so high, then maybe you crack. So it's good to start from the small steps and decide the right way.
Thank you. Another question? Last chance. So maybe I will ask you for applause for our speakers. So thank you very much once again for your presentation, for your lecture, and there's a chance for you for some last words, maybe invitation for a festival.
Okay, I have feeling I already said everything. I think that there was still one hint what I should get, and it was Rochenka, the yearbook, and this I forget, as I always forget. So we also publish every year our yearbook where there are some, let's say, curated choice of good quality wooden architecture, so this you can get on our website, and tomorrow and on Saturday in Tržnice. And yeah, thank you very much for coming and staying so long all the time, and thank you very much for hosting us again, Camp. It's really important to bring these topics to these spaces, and looking forward to be here again with audience in one year, let's say. And I hope that after COVID we don't have another topic to struggle with for years, because this would be too much. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.